ਦ ਹਰਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਦੇ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਸੈਗਮੈਂਟ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪ ਸਭ ਦਾ ਹਾਰਦਿਕ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ। ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਇਸ ਹਿੱਸੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੇਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਮਹੱਤਵਪੂਰਨ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਸ਼ੇਅਰ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਸਟੂਡੀਓ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਹੁੰਚੇ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ ਕੈਥਰੀਨ ਸੈਸ, ਇੱਕ ਨਾਮਵਰ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਲਾਇਰ ਨੇ, ਤੇ ਅੱਜ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਕਿ 17 ਅਕਤੂਬਰ ਨੂੰ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਮੈਰੀਜੁਆਨਾ ਨੂੰ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੀਗਲਾਈਜ਼ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ, ਇਸ ਦਾ ਕੀ ਇੰਪੈਕਟ ਪਏਗਾ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ 'ਤੇ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੈਂਟਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਲੋਕ ਸਿਟੀਜ਼ਨਸ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੇ, ਤੇ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਕੀ ਕੁਝ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਇਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਹੋਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਹੈ। ਸਵਾਗਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕੈਥਰੀਨ ਸੈਸ ਦਾ। Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Harpreet.
Thank you
Nice to
for
be
being
back.
here. It's a pleasure having you. So on October 17th, Canada has become the second country in the G7, actually the first country in the G7 and the second country in the developed countries which has legalized marijuana.
Yes.
So tell us from your expertise what you have gone through, what all is happening, what the common people should know specifically, and especially the immigrants should be aware of.
Well, the changes mean that people can now use and possess marijuana for personal recreational use. You can have up to 30 grams in your personal possession and up to 4 plants.
Right.
And it's meant to be for personal use. So the way the law has been set, the Cannabis Act has defined what is legal use or licit use and what is illicit use.
Right.
And the licit or legal provisions are very limited, and anything else other than what is legal is illicit. So you want to make sure you're very, very careful that you are following what is permissible.
Okay.
So for possession and where you can use it. So for example, you can use it in your home or your private accommodation. You cannot use it in your vehicle. So these are the kinds of things that you need to be aware of. In addition, while the laws that have been changed are federal laws,
right.
So this is the government of Canada that has implemented that. They've also given a considerable amount of jurisdiction to each province or territory to make additional changes if they want. So for example, in some provinces, they would say your possession is less than 30 grams.
Right.
In other provinces, the age limit is not 18. They make it 19. They may make it 21. Some provinces do not allow you to cultivate any plants.
Right.
And so you need to be aware of what is permissible in each province. So what you are used to in British Columbia may not be what you can do in Alberta or in
Right.
Ontario or wherever. So you need to be familiar if you're going to travel interjurisdictionally.
Okay.
The next issue that is really problematic is what is going on in our southern neighbor in the
Absolutely.
United States.
Yeah.
So many of the states do also allow for possession of marijuana. I think there are 9 states that do so. But the ones
Right.
that are most problematic are border states.
Right.
So Alaska, Washington State, Vermont, those are just a couple. So you'd think, well, if marijuana is legal in Canada and marijuana is legal in Washington State, it's okay to take some across the border.
Right.
Absolutely not. Transport of marijuana or any drug across a border is a criminal offense.
Right.
So you may find yourself in jail in the United States, or if you're returning, you may find yourself in jail in Canada. So under no circumstances are you to transport marijuana or any form of marijuana across the border.
Okay.
The other thing that's very interesting when you're dealing with the United States is, although some states have permitted it and made it lawful, federally it is still considered an illicit drug.
Right.
So if you have used marijuana, even if you're not bringing it back, but if you've used it in Washington State or in California or in Colorado, and you are coming across the border and the officials ask you that, they can charge you with an offense because federally possession or use is still illicit in the United States.
And what about the immigrants? What should they keep in mind specifically? And because you are a reputed lawyer who deals with the immigrants, so tell us in details as to what they should know.
Well, immigrants generally are in a more precarious set of circumstances than the rest of us. If it's just a matter of using cannabis in Canada, then they're on the same level playing field. But a temporary resident or a permanent resident is not a citizen.
Right.
And so a criminal conviction can have very serious ramifications on their status in Canada. For a person who's on temporary status, whether you're a visitor, a student, or a worker, if you have a criminal conviction, that renders you inadmissible, and you can be asked to leave, and you can be prohibited from returning to Canada for 5 years or considerably more.
So can you clarify this? This means only the citizens can possess 30 grams?
No. The law states that any adult is able to possess 30
Okay.
grams lawfully in Canada.
Right.
But if you breach any, if you have more than 30 grams, if you engage in any illicit use, if you are found to have any when you are coming back into the country. And here's where I think it becomes more problematic. If we go back to what we were talking about, say you are able to go into Washington State or California.
Right.
And it's permissible to use it personally in California or in Colorado or in Washington State. But when you come back into Canada, you are asked by a Canadian border official whether you've used any marijuana. That's an offense in the United States. So even if you don't have a charge, and even if you don't have a conviction, a Canadian Border Services official can say you've committed an offense and you are now inadmissible to Canada.
Right.
And you lose your status. You can also, as a permanent resident, be taken to an admissibility hearing and lose your status as well. So, I see this with a lot of permanent residents, people who've been here for a very, very long time, and they don't take the step of becoming a citizen. If you want to, if there's an accident that happens in your life, if there's some transgression, even an unintended one that ends up with criminal sanction, you can lose your permanent resident status. So it's the potential for harm or the potential for risk for an immigrant, whether permanent or temporary, is higher than for citizens of Canada. So you need to be aware of what the laws are, even more so than the rest of us.
Okay. Anything else also which can be detrimental to the interests of permanent residents or students or especially temporary workers?
Well, I think it really boils down to, do you have temporary status or do you have permanent status? And then are you engaging in actions which may result in a criminal conviction or charge, or as I said, even an offense?
Right.
So the way our laws work in Canada, our immigration laws, you can be inadmissible to Canada for being convicted outside of the country, for being convicted inside of the country,
Right.
or for having committed an offense outside of the country, which if you came to Canada would be considered a criminal offense. One of the best examples of that an immigration officer told me a long, long time ago was pertains to the story with the President Bill Clinton. When President Clinton admitted that he had used marijuana when he was in university. Well, he just admitted to committing an offense because he was possessing marijuana. And so had he at the time tried to enter Canada, he could have been determined to be inadmissible and denied entry. The good thing is that usually after you've committed an offense without being charged or convicted, after 5 years, you're good to go.
Right.
But before that, you can end up being inadmissible and denied entry or asked to leave. So you really want to pay attention to that. And if this is something that you are going to do and you are not a citizen, then stay in Canada, only do this in Canada, don't be traveling internationally. And there are a series of things that people need to be aware of, as we've talked about before. Never, ever travel across the border with any form of cannabis, okay?
Right.
That is a criminal offense internationally. And most jurisdictions in the world, the majority of jurisdictions in the world, still do not consider cannabis to be legal. Secondly, if you are returning to Canada and you do have cannabis in your possession, then be sure you declare that to the Canada Border Services officer.
Right.
That's very, very important. Don't exceed the limits. Make sure you understand what illicit use is versus non-illicit use.
Right.
If you are going to travel to another province and you still want to use cannabis, be sure you know what the rules are in that particular province, because it's not a level playing field wherever you go.
Right.
And never ever give cannabis, marijuana, pot, any form to somebody under the age of 18, not to a minor.
Absolutely. And finally, one last thing is that we have heard that even at the border, if you have consumed marijuana in Canada, you can be denied access to USA. So that is, of course, on everyone, not just the immigrants.
That's
but
on everyone. That's on everyone.
So the border officer has the right to stop you if he or she wants.
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Now, I'm not a U.S. lawyer, and there are a lot of people that are watching this very closely to see, is this going to change the way that U.S. border officials ask Canadians about what their habits are and what they've done? But the advice the Canadian government is still giving to people is be honest when you're going into the United States. Tell the truth. honesty is the best policy.
Absolutely.
That hasn't changed
Not
as of
just
October
theoretically,
17th.
but in practice it
That's
should be
right.
implemented.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for this information, and definitely this will help our viewers. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.
ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ। ਸੋ ਜੋ ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੈਥਰੀਨ ਸੈਸ ਨੇ ਮੁੱਖ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੈਂਟਸ ਨੂੰ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਧਿਆਨ 'ਚ ਰੱਖਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜੇਕਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ USA ਜਾਂਦੇ ਹੋ, ਕੰਜ਼ਿਊਮ ਨਾ ਕਰੋ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਉੱਥੇ ਕੈਨੇਬਿਸ ਯਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਮੈਰੀਜੁਆਨਾ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਇਸ ਨਾਲ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਜੇ ਚਾਰਜ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਹੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ, ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ 30 ਗ੍ਰਾਮਸ ਅਲਾਊਡ ਹੈ, ਪਰ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਇਲਾਵਾ ਇਹ ਡਿਪੈਂਡ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ ਬਾਰਡਰ ਆਫਿਸਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉੱਥੇ ਬੈਠਾ ਹੈ, ਉਹ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਜੇ ਚਾਰਜ ਕਰ ਦਿੰਦਾ ਤਾਂ ਉਸ ਦਾ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਨੁਕਸਾਨ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਧਿਆਨ ਨਾਲ ਈਵਨ ਦੂਸਰੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਵਿੰਸਿਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜਾਂ ਆਊਟ ਆਫ ਦਾ ਕੰਟਰੀ ਟਰੈਵਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ, ਇਹ ਸਾਰੀ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਧਿਆਨ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਜਾਵੇ।